Welcome to the Nutrigenomic Nation podcast with Brian Highfield, certified nutritionist, author, speaker, and founder of multiple successful companies in the health world. Brian is known for educating healthcare professionals and others on improving their health and their life through breakthroughs in nutrition, technology, and biochemistry. On the podcast, Brian interviews thought leaders in the world of nutrition and natural health. He and his guests share the secrets of a whole life natural approach to health and the life-altering results you can get by making easy changes to your diet and daily routine.
All right, I want to welcome you to Nutrigenomic Nation. I'm your host, Brian Highfield, and today we have a special guest. We have Brittany Ferri. Brittany is an occupational therapist and the founder of Simplicity of Health. She has training as an anxiety treatment specialist, certified psychiatric rehab practitioner, and a clinical trauma specialist. So, Brittany, I want to welcome you to Nutrigenomic Nation. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome. So my first question for you, Brittany, I want to know a little bit about you. I'm sure our listeners do too. So can you tell us a little bit about your background? What drove you to choose health as a occupation?
Yeah, I was always interested in the sciences growing up. Didn't really necessarily know where it would lead until I got to college, and I kind of decided to go for a biology major with the intent of going pre-med. But as I got into it, I think it was after my freshman year, I found that I really wasn't interested in the courses. I found they were really heavy material, and I really couldn't see myself doing that for the next 8+ years. So I was still interested in science, you know, that passion never really left me. So I decided to look into other health disciplines, and I happened upon occupational therapy, which really ended up being 100% what I was looking for. You know, it really focuses on the body and the mind, and I really love that. And I think it sets us apart from other health fields. And as such, I really kind of took advantage of that focus on the mind, and I went on to specialize in mental health once I began practicing.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the body first, and then let's bring the mind into this as well, because I'm really interested in what you have to say about some of our emotional and cognitive effects from nutrition. But can you just tell our listeners, I mean, how is nutrition important for them, and you know, why should it be a focus of them? Why should they be proactive about their nutritional needs?
Yeah, nutrition has a huge impact on the body. I mean, for you know, hundreds of years, there's really been a lot of studies and a lot of, you know, foundational information on the fact that certain nutritional deficits, you know, vitamin deficits, mineral deficits, things like that can really cause major conditions in the body, which obviously, because of the mind-body connection, that causes detriment to the mind. So, you know, things like scurvy, vitamin deficiencies, rickets, you know, these are maybe old conditions that people have heard of, but, you know, the evidence is there that nutritional deficits can cause lasting deficits.
So so now let's talk about just kind of how that affects the mind then, because I think this is your sweet spot from what you do in a clinical setting. So what's the relationship between nutrition and things like our mood and our emotions and just how we think and our cognitive abilities? What's the link there?
Yeah, if we're eating processed foods, you know, things that are innately bad for us, you know, prepackaged, processed, lots of preservatives, things like that, you know, our bodies become sluggish. It's really hard for us to kind of get rid of all the toxins that we're bringing in, you know, on top of the toxins that we're getting from the air, from, you know, other parts of the environment. So, you know, our bodies kind of become overloaded, and we're not really able to get those toxins out, which has a direct correlate to our mental health. You know, if our bodies are sluggish and not performing as they should, our cognition is also going to be sluggish. We're going to find it hard to really build up that energy in the morning or even throughout the day. We're going to find it really hard to focus, hard to regulate our moods. You know, we really just aren't going to be functioning, you know, peak performance like we should.
Right.
So it definitely has an impact on mental health.
So, yeah, so how does, you know, because you mentioned like processed foods as a good tip to kind of avoid processed foods. I mean, help people understand, you know, what are processed foods and what are some good alternatives there?
Yeah, so processed foods are really, like I mentioned, kind of anything prepackaged. So, if it comes in a bag or a box or something like that, it's really not going to be that good for you. And I hate to say it, a lot of times this kind of flies under the radar, but deli meats is another thing that's highly processed. Doesn't really come in a bag or a box. People think, oh, it's meat, it's got to be good, but that's one of the most highly processed foods. Tons of preservatives in there, very bad for the body. And so, yeah, like I said, really anything that isn't in the produce section, I hate to say, is going to be, processed and, with laden with preservatives to some extent.
Yeah, and a lot of people are thinking, well, the stuff in the produce section is too expensive, and the other stuff is cheap and easy. Is that really true? And is it really worth it if it is true?
The funny part is that I do often hear that as an excuse, and I can definitely understand, certain exotic things in the produce section that you wouldn't find anywhere. Yeah, those are going to be marked up a bit. But I was actually just mentioning this to somebody the other day. I usually get the small bag of baby carrots. There's not too much in there, 99 cents worth. But I chose to get the big bag the other day. I think it was 3 pounds of carrots, and it was $2, which it's dirt cheap. There's so many carrots in there, and you could throw carrots in anything. Use them as a quick snack with hummus. Throw them in a salad. Throw them in a casserole. I mean, and that's a ton of carrots. So when I hear people saying that it's too expensive to shop fresh in the produce section, I really do think sometimes that can be an excuse. But sometimes it can be true, but it's definitely possible to get those basic staples, spinach, kale, carrots, sweet potatoes for a reasonable price.
You say kale, and I just cringe every time someone says kale to me. I love things like spinach and other types of lettuce, but kale, I understand is super rich and vitamins and stuff like that. But every time someone says the word, I just have this shiver go across my body there. But
It's certainly an acquired taste.
yes. And you mentioned like carrots and the hummus, and some people, I don't know. I don't know if this is true with you. Do you run into people that it's really just it's a mindset shift? They're used to buying the processed foods. Their parents took them to the deli and they bought the deli meats and the processed foods because of the convenience that we talked about before. And so, do you think it's a mindset that they just really need to get into a habit of buying stuff? Because I mean, like you said, carrots. People like carrots. People kale not so much, but other things in the produce section. I mean, they're good. And hummus is something I didn't even have. I don't think until I was in my 20s or 30s did I start appreciating things like hummus. So do you think we were raised and conditioned a certain way by our parents, or is it a mindset? And how do you help people shift their mindset from the processed foods to the nutritional foods?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I definitely think it's partly how we were raised. I personally came from a household with pretty strict regulations. I mean, no soda for miles. I don't think I ever had soda until I was in college, and even then, wow, this is way too sweet because my body was kind of conditioned to not like it. But my mother would always cook for my grandparents, and so mainly for my grandparents, but my dad and I would also be eating the food. And so I really grew up with not a lot of seasoning, not a lot of salt, like a really diabetic friendly diet. So I really came to love, the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, everything that was really thrown in there. So I think that definitely led to, my current diet, which is largely plant-based. And I definitely think that has an impact. And I kind of see that when I interact with other people too, either they were raised with a lot of soda or tons of candy, and, they kind of have that sweet tooth as an adult, and it doesn't really go away. But there's definitely people who have either had health scares or for any reason they, decide to make that shift. And it can be tough fighting against what we know, but it's definitely worth it. If you make the commitment to change that mindset, then it definitely works, and it definitely sticks for those who like to stick with it and go for it.
Great. So if someone comes to you and they experiencing some of the things that we talked about earlier, where they seem to be always in a bad mood, they are very sluggish, just can't think clearly. What are some of the things? Where do you start them in terms of their therapy? Where do you begin with someone with those types of issues? Because that's pretty common, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I hear that the most common complaint that people have to their doctors is they just lack of energy. So where would you start someone who came in and told you they have those types of symptoms?
Yeah, that's definitely a big one, and it's super impactful too. First thing that I would go towards is caffeine. Honestly, a lot of people that are sluggish immediately go for some sort of caffeine, and they might not even realize, that energy drinks and tea, even decaf coffee, it all has caffeine in it. And, reaching for something like that is really not going to keep the body at that, nice level pace that we like to keep it at. It's going to give us those spikes of energy, and then we crash even lower. And that's when we get back to our baseline and we realize, wow, I'm still so sluggish. What's going on? So you're not fixing the root problem. So I would urge you to wean yourself off of caffeine slowly. Either substitute it with iced tea, which has a little bit less, or and then eventually wean yourself onto like herbal tea or some sort of flavorful drink that's not too bad to replace your typical coffee and energy drinks with. And aside from the caffeine, another thing I see often is really blood sugar. Blood sugar is another thing that crashes constantly, either because people aren't eating regular meals, they're not eating meals at all. Sometimes they're just snacking constantly, or they're skipping meals and whatnot, and their schedules are just kind of a mess when it comes to that, and that definitely affects the body. Our energy will go way up if we grab a snack that's full of carbohydrates, and then once that wears off and we don't give our body anything nutrient rich to follow it, then we're just going to crash. It's very similar to the caffeine. And I think the most important takeaway is to really keep our body running at that mid range, not too high energy, not too low energy. That's how you're healthy and your body's actually using what you're taking in the right way.
Awesome. So, and right now, something very, very topical. People are really, worried about the COVID virus. The flu season's coming upon us. So other viral infections are of concern for people right now. What can people do nutritionally or even through mentally? Things that can help really boost their immune system for to kind of ease their worry and help prepare, I guess, them biophysically for any type of infection.
Right. Yeah, I definitely get this question a lot, and I'm a really firm believer that diet is medicine. If you're dealing with any like real minor issues, and you might think you want to go to the doctor and get some meds for it or something like that, look at your diet first. Where are you lacking? Replacing those high carbohydrate refined foods with either whole grains or fruits and veggies, and really just avoiding those energy crashes and the blood sugar spikes and things like that. I'm a real firm believer in diet is medicine, like I said. So, looking to the diet first. What can we change here? And, how do I respond to it? Am I sleeping better? Am I eating better? Am I focused more at work? And really looking to that as your first line of treatment, so to speak. And then if your symptoms persist and you're still having issues, of course, check out the doctor and see if you can incorporate some supplements or medicine or something else. But definitely look to your own habits and behaviors first.
Is there certain types of foods that they should look for that may really help support that immune response inside their body?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of foods that are really rich in vitamin C. A lot of those dark leafy greens are rich in the vitamin C and the iron that we really need to keep the immune system up and also our energy up in general. So, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, broccoli, the broccoli leaves even, everything like that is, super good. And then tons of fruits are even really good in vitamin C. Strawberries, oranges, really anything citrus is good. And, a lot of that stuff, if you're not crazy, like you mentioned, if you're not crazy about the kale and stuff like that, it's really good to throw in a smoothie with, other veggies and fruits that are, have similar properties and kind of balance it out with the sweet and the bitter.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. It's because a lot of people think, oh, again, you mentioned the kale word again, but yeah, if you throw that into a smoothie with some fruits and things like that, I think it's a little bit more appetizing for people to get down and still benefit from those nutrients. So I like that. I like that suggestion there as well. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know? I mean, any other passion things or things you're running into lately with some of your clients that seems to be just a general concern right now that you want our listeners to know?
I think a lot of people these days, myself included, are really getting stir crazy with everything that's been going on. I know a lot of people really aren't having the summer that they planned. A lot of people have that outlet, traveling, going to parties, just getting outside and being more active. And a lot of that has come to a screeching halt, unfortunately, due to COVID. So I would definitely suggest similarly with the diet, you don't want to be stuck in the house with your energy just crashing constantly, going up and down and still reliant on, caffeine and really processed foods. So really using the diet as a way to kind of help your mental health, like we were mentioning before, but, make it so that you're not as upset with the current situation. Like it can definitely help with stress too. I mean, COVID is definitely a very stressful situation, and keeping your diet kind of on point is a really good way to manage the energy levels along with the stress levels. Because let's face it, if we're always out of energy, our stress tolerance is going to be a lot lower. Our frustration tolerance is going to be a lot lower. We're going to find it a lot easier to get agitated with things. So all of these things really go hand in hand.
No, that's those are some great tips there. I did, wasn't even thinking about stress. As far as something that would go hand in hand with your energy levels and everything going on today, but very, very important to manage. So that's awesome advice. So cool. Well, we're at the end of our broadcast here, and really want to appreciate Brittany. She's been our guest today. Brittany Ferri is an occupational therapist and the founder of Simplicity Health, and she's been our guest today. So thank you so much, Brittany. And from all of us at Nutrigenomic Nation, I hope you enjoyed the discussion today, and we'll hope to hear from you next time when we talk about another topic related to your good health. Thank you so much for listening.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.